What if I told you there is a forest where people vanish without a trace? Where campers wake up in the middle of the night surrounded by whispers? Where hunters return pale and broken, refusing to speak of what they've seen? And where even the police refuse to search after dark? For decades, locals have called it the cursed forest, a stretch of dense, endless woods where the trees seem to move when you're not looking, and shadows crawl where no light should exist. Some say it's haunted. Others whisper that something older, darker, lives beneath its soil. But tonight, we're going to explore three true terrifying stories connected to this place. Stories that come from witnesses who were never the same after stepping inside. Stories that make you wonder if the forest is just a place or a living entity that hungers. And if you think you're safe just sitting at home watching this video, remember, the people in these stories thought they were safe too, until the forest decided otherwise. Stay with me until the end, because these stories will change the way you look at the woods forever. Story 1. The Vanishing Camper. It began, as these stories often do, with Laughter Point 4 college students. Mark, Julia, Daniel, and Claire decided to celebrate the end of exams with a weekend camping trip. They wanted adventure, something more exciting than just bars or dorm parties. The cursed forest was not on their radar at first, but Mark, always the thrill seeker, had heard whispers about it. The locals in the nearby town warned against it, muttering that strange things happened there. That should have been enough to turn them away. Instead, it only made the idea more thrilling. They arrived in the afternoon, carrying backpacks and tents, the late summer sun still high above. The forest was breathtaking at first sight. Towering pines, a thick canopy filtering golden light, the earthy scent of moss and damp soil. The kind of place that feels alive. Too alive. They set up camp near a small clearing, built a fire pit, and by nightfall they were roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. The first hours were normal, harmless, comforting even. But the forest, it has a way of waiting. It was around midnight when Julia noticed it first. "Do you guys hear that?" she whispered, leaning closer to the fire. The group quieted. At first, it was nothing, just the usual forest sounds, wind brushing leaves, the distant croak of frogs, an occasional owl. But then a faint voice, low, indistinct, almost like a child calling from far away. Daniel frowned. Probably just an echo from the highway. But they all knew the nearest road was miles away. Mark, trying to lighten the mood, smirked. "Maybe Bigfoot wants a marshmallow." The others laughed, but uneasily. That should have been the end of it. But curiosity, dangerous, hungry curiosity, took hold of Mark. He grabbed a flashlight. "Be right back. If it's some drunk hiker, I'll scare him back to town." Julia grabbed his arm. "Don't. Seriously. Just stay." But he pulled away, flashing that reckless grin, and disappeared into the dark. The light of his flashlight bobbed between the trees, then vanished. Minutes passed. 10. 15. "Mark," Claire called, her voice cracking. No answer. Daniel, frustrated, grabbed another flashlight. "He's screwing with us. I'll get him." He walked into the trees, but he didn't go far, maybe 20 yards, before he came back pale. "There's nothing," he whispered. "It's like the forest swallowed him." His footprints stop. Just stop. The girls thought he was joking, until they saw his trembling hands. The three of them waited, huddled by the fire. Hours crawled by. They heard twigs snapping, whispering voices circling the clearing, but never Mark. Around 3 in the morning, their tent collapsed as if something or someone had slashed through the ropes. Panic surged, and they ran to the car, abandoning half their gear. The police searched the forest the next morning. They found Mark's backpack near a tree with strange, deep carvings in the bark, spirals, lines, symbols no one recognized. His flashlight was lying beside it, the batteries still fresh. But there were no footprints, no trail, no blood. Just absence. Weeks turned into months. Mark was never found. Years later, Julia spoke about that night in an interview. She confessed something she had kept secret. As they ran from the clearing, she glanced back, just once, and swore she saw Mark standing at the edge of the trees. His body was still, rigid, his face pale, stretched unnaturally long, with empty sockets where his eyes should have been. And the voice that called her name? It was Mark's voice, but it didn't come from him. It came from everywhere, from the trees themselves. Story 2. The hunters cursed long before the campers ever set foot in the forest. The locals already knew to stay away. They didn't talk about it openly, but in hushed tones over beers at the bar or whispered warnings to travelers passing through. The legend always came up, and much of that legend centered around one man. His name was Thomas Hale. Thomas was no stranger to the woods. A lifelong hunter, he had grown up learning to track deer, skin rabbits, and navigate the thickest parts of the forest without ever losing his bearings. He wasn't reckless. He respected nature, respected its dangers, but he wasn't afraid either. To Thomas, the forest was familiar, predictable, a place where he was in control, until one cold October evening. The day had started as any other hunt. His rifle slung over his shoulder, he followed fresh deer tracks deeper into the trees. The sun hung low, orange bleeding into purple as the forest darkened. Normally, he would have turned back by then, but that evening, something felt different. He couldn't explain it, but the air was heavy, pressing against his chest, and the tracks he followed. They were strange, too large for a deer, too deep for the soft soil, almost human, but not quite. He should have turned back. Instead, he pushed forward as twilight fell. The usual sounds of the forest died. No birds, no insects, no rustling leaves, just silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin prickle, as though the world is holding its breath. That's when he heard it. A whistle, soft, high-pitched, melodic. At first, Thomas thought it was just wind through the branches, but it was too deliberate, too playful, and it was following him. He froze, listened, the whistle stopped, then a voice. Thomas. His blood turned cold. He spun around, rifle raised, but saw nothing. The trees stared back, shadows shifting between them. He swallowed hard, muttering under his breath, just tired, just my head. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Hours slipped by, though his watch told him only minutes had passed. The forest bent around him. No matter how far he walked, every tree looked the same. Every path circled back to a T1 point. He thought he saw a lantern light in the distance, warm, golden, inviting. He hurried toward it, desperate for a way out. But the closer he got, the farther it seemed. When he finally reached the clearing where the glow should have been, there was nothing. just an old oak tree with carvings etched into its bark. Spirals, symbols, the same that had been found years later by the missing camper's pack. The forest wasn't letting him go for 3 nights. Thomas wandered. He didn't eat. He barely slept. And when he did close his eyes, he dreamed of antlers stretching from the darkness, reaching for him, pulling him into the soil that on the 4th day, searchers found him collapsed near the edge of the woods. His body was scratched as though he had run through thorn bush after thorn bush, but there were no thorns where they found him. His clothes were torn, his boots caked in mud so black it looked like tar. He was alive, but changed. When he woke in the hospital, he refused to speak. His wife begged him, his friends demanded answers, but he just sat there, wide-eyed, lips trembling, as if any word he spoke would summon whatever had stalked him. Finally, late one night, he whispered to a nurse. She later told the story to her sister, and from her, it spread through the town. He said there was something in the forest, something old. It moved like a man, but its head was that of a deer, with massive antlers that scraped the branches above. Its eyes burned white, glowing like dying stars. And it spoke, not with its mouth, but through the trees, through the voices of his wife, his son, his dead father. That it lured him deeper, circling him in a maze of endless paths. When he tried to pray, it whistled. When he tried to run, it laughed. And when he finally fell to his knees, begging for mercy, it crouched before him, placing a clawed hand on his chest. The hand was cold as stone. "You are mine now," it whispered. Thomas lived, yes. But in a way, he never came back. He refused to hunt again. He refused to even step foot in his own backyard if it bordered the tree lane. He kept his windows locked, his curtains shut, and in the dead of night, his wife swore she could hear him muttering, "Don't whistle. Don't answer the trees." A year later, Thomas was gone. They found him in the barn, a rope around his neck, his boots knocked over. On the dirt floor beneath him, scratched into the earth with desperate fingernails, were those same spirals. The forest had claimed him after all. Story 3. The road that leads nowhere. Every cursed place has one detail that ties it together. For this forest, it wasn't just the whispers or the strange figures in the dark. It was the road. That there's an old dirt road that cuts through the forest, a road so narrow and winding that GPS systems often lose it completely. Locals say that if you drive it at night, you'll never come out the same way you entered. Some people swear it loops endlessly. Others say it leads you straight into the heart of the forest where no human should ever go. One couple found this out the hard way. Their names were Evan and Melissa. Young, in love, recently engaged. They were driving home from a family gathering late one summer night. Tired, a little tipsy on happiness, and eager to get back to their apartment in the city, they decided to take a shortcut. The shortcut was the dirt road. At first, it seemed harmless enough. Their headlights illuminated trees on both sides, tall pines and oaks, their branches clawing overhead like skeletal fingers. The radio played softly, the hum of the tires on gravel soothing in the quiet night. But after 20 minutes, Melissa frowned. "Didn't we pass that sign already?" Evan glanced at the wooden post on the side of the road. It was marked with faded red paint, an arrow pointing straight ahead. He laughed it off. "There's probably a bunch of them along the way. Keeps drivers from getting lost." But 10 minutes later, another identical sign appeared. Same paint, same arrow, same bent nail sticking out of the top. Melissa turned down the radio. Evan, that's the same sign. I swear. He tried to argue, but even he felt the unease settling in. They drove on. Soon, the GPS froze. The screen showed their car stuck on a single stretch of road, the little arrow spinning in circles. Cell phones lost service. The clock on the dashboard flickered, then stopped. Midnight, frozen in place. That's when the road began to change. The trees grew thicker, their trunks crowding the edge of the road, almost touching the car as it passed. The headlights struggled to push back the dark, as though the night itself were swallowing the light. Melissa clutched Evan's arm. Slow down. Why? Because I think someone's out there. He pressed the brakes. The car rolled to a crawl, and that's when they saw that a figure standing at the edge of the road. It was tall, impossibly thin, its body draped in rags that fluttered in a wind the couple couldn't feel. Its face was pale, featureless, except for a wide black hole where a mouth should be. Melissa gasped. Keep driving. Evan, go. He slammed the gas. The car roared forward. The figure vanished into the darkness behind them. For a moment, they thought they were safe, until the headlights caught something further ahead. The same figure, standing in the middle of the road. Its mouth was open wider now, impossibly wide, stretching ear to ear. And though no sound came from it, both Evan and Melissa swore they heard screaming. Not in the air, not with their ears, inside their skulls. Evan swerved violently, barely missing the figure, the tires kicking up gravel. Melissa was crying now, shaking, her nails digging into the dashboard. We have to turn around, she screamed. But when Evan hit the brakes and spun the car to face the other direction, the road behind them was gone. In its place was more forest. Dense, impenetrable, endless. Panic set in. They drove blindly, desperate to find a way out. And for hours, it was the same. The looping road, the suffocating trees, the frozen clock. Sometimes they thought they saw a lantern light flickering between the trunks, just out of reach. Sometimes they heard whispers, voices calling their names at one point. Melissa pulled out her phone, forgetting it had no signal, and snapped a picture through the rear window. When she looked at the screen, her heart stopped. Behind their car, lining the edges of the road, were dozens of figures. Silent, still, watching, but when she looked back with her own eyes, nothing. Just empty road. The night dragged on until exhaustion overtook them. Their gas gauge hovered near empty, and Evan began to wonder if they would ever leave. But then, just as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the forest seemed to release them. The trees thinned. The dirt road straightened, and suddenly they were back on the main highway. They pulled over immediately, both of them trembling, gasping for breath. Evan checked his watch. It had been 10 minutes since they entered the road, but their fuel tank told another story. The car was nearly empty. Melissa never looked at the photo again. She deleted it that same morning, shaking with terror, as if erasing it might erase the memory. It didn't. To this day, both of them refuse to drive at night. And when they tell their story, their voices crack, their eyes dart nervously to the tree line, as though afraid the forest might hear them, because the road is still there. And sometimes it waits.